The stranger in the shadows night was unusually quiet, the kind of silence that makes even the ticking of a clock sound like a drumbeat. Most people were asleep, their homes dark, their dreams pulling them deeper into rest. But somewhere on the outskirts of Los Angeles, a dim glow escaped from the windows of a large, high-tech warehouse that looked abandoned from the outside. Inside, a single man stood bent over a long work table. Wires scattered everywhere, blueprints pinned to the walls, and a laptop screen blinking with unfinished code. He looked tired. His dark shirt clung to his back with sweat, and his fingers moved slowly as if every movement took extra effort. It was Elon Musk. He wasn't surrounded by a team, wasn't speaking on a stage, he wasn't behind cameras or in meetings. Tonight he was just a man, working, tinkering, dreaming alone. What no one knew was that this project meant more to him than anything he'd ever done, not because it would make him richer or more famous, but because he believed it could. Help people. Real people. It was a clean energy prototype that could power remote villages using only sunlight and wind. And he was stuck. The model wasn't responding the way it should. The battery output was off. Something was wrong in the calculations, but he couldn't find it. Hours had passed, then days, and now it was midnight. He rubbed his temples, leaned back in his chair, and whispered, "Maybe I'm not the guy who can fix this." But just as the words left his mouth, he heard a voice behind him. "You look like you've been here for hours." Elon jumped slightly and turned around. Standing in the doorway wearing a simple hoodie was Keanu Reeves. Elon blinked. "Are you doing here?" Keanu smiled gently and stepped inside. "I was driving by. I like late-night rides. They clear my head. I saw the light on. I thought it was strange." Elon laughed quietly. "I guess it is." Keanu walked over slowly, eyes scanning the room. It was messy, but full of purpose. Wires, batteries, a solar cell, a half-assembled generator. It wasn't chaos. No, it was passion. "You working on something big?" Keanu asked. Elon hesitated, then nodded. "I was, but I think I hit a wall." Keanu sat down across from him. "Maybe a fresh pair of eyes can help." Elon chuckled again, a little more bitter this time. "Unless you're secretly an engineer, I don't think no," Keanu said softly. "But I know what it feels like to carry something heavy alone." Elon looked at him. Really looked at him. In that moment, something shifted. Keanu wasn't just a stranger. He was someone who understood loneliness. Someone who had stayed up at night asking the same kind of questions. Keanu glanced at the diagrams. "So what is this?" Elon sighed. "A micro-generator for off-grid communities. Something cheap and durable. The idea is simple. But the output keeps failing. I've checked everything twice. Just doesn't work." Keanu nodded. "You mind if I ask something?" "Sure." "How long have you been working on this?" 7 months, Elon replied. "And for the last 3 weeks? Without telling anyone? Not even my team?" "Why not?" Elon hesitated. "Because if it fails, I don't want anyone else to feel responsible. It's my dream, my burden." Keanu leaned back and breathed deeply. "You know, it's funny. People think success comes from standing in the spotlight, but I think real strength comes from moments like this. And no one is watching, and you still show up." Elon looked down at his hands. Keanu leaned forward. "Let me stay. Maybe I can't fix the tech. But maybe you don't need fixing. Maybe you just need someone to believe with you. Even if it's just for tonight." For the first time in days, Elon smiled. They sat together in silence for a while. Keanu grabbed a chair and started looking through the papers. "So, you want to explain this part to me like I'm 5? Elon laughed, the tension in his shoulders slowly melting. He picked up a pencil and started drawing in the air. "Okay, imagine you live in a village with no power, but you have wind and sun. This device uses both. During the day, it stores sunlight. During the night, it uses wind to top off the battery. But if either one fails, it all shuts down?" "Exactly." Keanu nodded. "So the problem is how to keep it running when only one source is working." "Yes." "And the battery drains too fast?" Elon nodded. "Could it be the converter?" Keanu asked. Elon paused. He hadn't thought of that. He rushed over to his laptop, pulled up the schematic, and stared at it. The converter was based on an old model he had designed years ago for a different kind of system. No way, he whispered. It's not optimized for variable input. Keanu tilted his head. So it chokes when the power source changes. He looked up slowly, realization spreading across his face. I need to redesign it. From scratch, Keanu smiled. Then we better make coffee. Asterisk, asterisk, 2 hours passed like minutes. Elon drew, coded, and restructured the converter logic, while Keanu cleaned up the space, brought him water, and read old research papers allowed to keep the flow going. At one point, Keanu even helped hold wires while Elon rewired a small test box. By 3:45 a.m. They had a working prototype. Elon plugged it in. The small wind fan began spinning. A green light blinked. The battery held. No drops. No surges. Steady output. Elon stared at it, almost afraid to breathe. Then he turned to Keanu and said, "You just saved this project." Keanu shook his head. "No, man. You saved it. I just reminded you that you weren't alone." Asterisk, asterisk. The sun was rising when they stepped outside. The city was just beginning to wake up. Cars in the distance. A dog barking. The sky glowing orange. They stood quietly for a moment. "Why did you really stop?" Elon finally asked. Keanu looked at him. "Because sometimes the universe whispers, and when it does, you listen." Elon nodded. Keanu reached out, shook his olays hand and smiled. "Good luck, Elon. And don't forget, even the brightest minds need rest." Then he walked away, disappearing into the morning light. Elon stood there for a long time, the wind brushing his hair, the prototype still glowing. Behind him, that night changed everything, but he didn't know yet that it was only the beginning. Whispers beyond the light. Next morning, the city buzzed with its usual rhythm, cars honking, people rushing to work, and emails flooding inboxes. But inside the same quiet warehouse on the edge of town, something had changed. Not just the circuitry of a machine, but something deeper in Elon Musk himself. He hadn't slept. He didn't feel tired either. Success of the prototype test just hours ago was still sinking in. His mind was clear now, lighter than it had been in weeks. He sat in silence, staring at the green blinking light on the small generator. Thinking about Keanu, he hadn't expected that visit. He hadn't expected someone to care, especially someone who didn't need anything from him. But more than anything, he hadn't expected how much it meant to be seen. Truly seen. Asterisk, asterisk that. Same morning, Keanu Reeves was sitting at a small cafe near Venice Beach. He was wearing sunglasses and a cap, reading an old paperback novel. People passed by, some looking twice, wondering if it was really him, but no one disturbed him. Today, his mind kept drifting back to the warehouse, to the loneliness he saw in Elon's eyes. Keanu knew that look well. He had seen it in the mirror years ago, after his losses. After his name stopped meaning anything in his own heart, he had learned something back then. The greatest weight isn't failure, it's isolation. He flipped a page but didn't read it. Instead, he pulled out his phone and typed a short message. "You're not done yet. When you launch it, I want to be there." Smiled as he hit send. Asterisk, asterisk across town. Elon read the message. He didn't reply. He just placed the phone down slowly and looked at the prototype again. He picked up a marker and wrote something on the wall in bold letters. Phase 2, the field test. Asterisk, asterisk by late afternoon. Elon's team began arriving. The warehouse had been closed for days, but now he had called them back. A young engineer named Maya looked around in confusion. "Wait, what's going on? I thought this place was on hold." Elon smiled and pointed to the prototype. "Not anymore. It worked, and now we're building 3 more. We're taking this into the real world." The team exchanged glances. "You fixed the output issue?" Maya asked. Ella nodded. "With some help?" "Help? Who? The software guys?" Elon shook his head. "No, a friend. Someone who reminded me what matters." He didn't explain further. Instead, he handed out tasks. "Maya, lead the solar panel integration. Ben, you're on the rotor stabilization. Jules, handle the mobile housing unit. I want all 3 built and ready for deployment in 1 week. Someone laughed nervously. A week? That's crazy. Elon smiled. So was getting a car to orbit. Let's get to work. Asterisk. Meanwhile, Keanu was doing something no one expected. He walked into a dusty workshop tucked behind an old bookstore. In Pasadena, the man behind the counter was in his 70s, wearing thick glasses and surrounded by clocks and broken radios. Well, I'll be. The man smiled. Keanu Reeves. Haven't seen you since you bought that old typewriter? Keanu chuckled. I still have it. What brings you here? Keanu placed a small notebook on the counter. I need help building something. The man raised an eyebrow. What kind of something? Keanu opened the notebook. Rough sketches filled the pages, nothing too technical, but enough to show a clear idea. A self-contained charger with a hand crank, a small display, and a signal output. You want to build a portable emergency generator? The man asked. Not for profit. For people. For those who live off the grid, or who lose power during storms. I want it simple, something even a child could use. The man stared at him. Why now? Keanu paused, then said softly, because someone reminded me last night that we've got too many people working alone in the dark. The old man nodded. I'll help you, but I'll need a few days. Take your time. I'm not racing anyone. Keanu left the workshop with a quiet sense of purpose. Asterisk, as the week passed. Both men, Elon and Keanu, worked in their own corners of the world, building, planning, dreaming. ELON. Single quotes, as team made rapid progress. They worked late into the nights. And every time someone started to burn out, Elon would say, remember why we're doing this. By the end of the 7th day, they had built 3 working units. The plan was clear now. Test the devices in 3 locations. A mountain village in Peru, a remote island in Indonesia, and a desert community in northern Africa. The launch was set for the following Friday. Keanu spent the same days visiting community centers, talking to aid workers, and testing his small device with real people. He handed out 3 prototypes to strangers, a single mother in a hurricane-prone town, a retired veteran who lived in his truck, and an elderly woman running a shelter for runaway kids. Each time, he placed the device in someone's hands. He told them the same thing, you matter, and you're not invisible. They all cried. Friday arrived, in the early morning hours. Elon stood in front of his team, staring at the 3 generators being loaded into trucks. Then his phone buzzed. A photo came through. It was Keanu standing with the retired veteran smiling. The device was lighting up a small heater beside him. Below the photo were the words, "Never doubt the power of one quiet act." Elon stared at it for a long moment. Then he looked up at his team. We're not launching a product, he said. We're launching hope. They all nodded. Then they set off, one team to Peru, another to Indonesia, and the third to Africa. 3 days later, Elon stood in the mountain village, watching as a young boy turned on a light bulb for the first time in his life. It flickered, then stayed on. The villagers cheered low and blinked back tears. Suddenly, he heard a voice behind him, nice light. He turned. Keanu stood there, dusty boots, tired eyes, and a smile on his face. Elon couldn't believe it. What are you doing? Here, I figured you might need someone to remind you again. This isn't just a project, this is a story worth telling. Elon laughed. Keanu added, and I brought someone who wants to tell it. From behind him stepped a woman with a camera. A documentary filmmaker Keanu had met during one of his visits. The world needs to see this, she said. Elon nodded, and let's show them. Asterisk. As the sun set over the village, a light glowed inside every home. Children played under lamps. For the first time, mothers cooked dinner without firewood, and 2 men, one an engineer, the other an actor, sat on a hillside looking at the lights below. You know, Elon said. I always thought changing the world meant doing something massive. Keanu replied softly. Sometimes it just means showing up when no one else does. The storm, no one expected to, weeks after the light first glowed in that tiny mountain village. The story of Elon's invention and Keanu's quiet involvement began to ripple out, not through press releases or big headlines, but through whispered testimonies, short video clips, and photos shared by the very people whose lives had changed. An old man in Peru now read books at night under a working lamp. A girl in Indonesia used the light to study past sunset for the first time. An entire desert community in Africa gathered around a single generator that powered fans, kept water cool, and gave hope where there was once only dust and silence. None of them knew Elon personally. None of them cared that the man beside him had played heroes in movies. They only knew that someone cared enough to bring light to their darkness. Asterisk, asterisk. But not everyone celebrated. In a corner office in downtown Los Angeles, a boardroom full of investors stared at the viral clips with frowns on their faces. These were men and women who had backed one of Elon's other projects, a luxury solar tech line built for wealthy clients, priced for the top 1%. The cheaper models from the Village Initiative, if made public, would destroy their brand value. A sharp-voiced executive spoke up. If this thing goes global, we lose billions. Elon can't move forward with this. It wasn't even approved by the board. Another nodded. Pull funding. Freeze access to the warehouse. Remind him where the real money is. Just like that, a storm began to gather behind the scenes. Asterisk, asterisk, that evening, Elon returned to the warehouse. The place was quiet, but full of energy. Maya and the rest of the team were discussing final touches for the mass production models. Local governments from different countries had shown interest. NGOs were writing in. The future looked promising. But when Elon opened his laptop, he froze. An alert on the screen read, "Access suspended. Internal investigation pending?" He called the office. "No." "Answer." He messaged his assistant. Silence. And then he got the email. A cold, corporate statement. "Due to unauthorized use of company funds and unapproved experimental activities, your access to Project Delta has been suspended indefinitely. Please refrain from further fieldwork until reviewed." Elon stared at the screen in disbelief. All the progress, all the momentum, frozen with a few keystrokes. Asterisk, asterisk, Keanu was at a community event. When he got the call, he answered, and the voice on the other side trembled. It was Maya. They shut us down. Everything. Even our accounts. Elon's locked out. The warehouse is being reviewed. We don't know what to do. Keanu didn't speak for a moment. Then he said, "Send me the location of everyone working tonight. I'm coming over." Asterisk. Asterisk. An hour later, Keanu walked into the warehouse. The energy was gone now. It felt hollow, like a dream that had ended too soon. Elon sat in the corner, staring at nothing. "They took it," he said quietly. Keanu walked over and sat beside him. "They didn't take what matters." Elon shook his head. "I thought I could do this differently. I'll help people without asking permission. But I was wrong." Keanu leaned back, crossed his arms, and looked around. "You still have your mind? Your heart? You have people who believe in you. If that's not power, I don't know what is." Elon looked up. "But we can't build without money," Keanu smiled gently. "Money isn't the only currency. You gave light to people, Elon. Someone out there will want to help keep it going." "Who?" Keanu stood. "Let me show you something." Asterisk, asterisk, the next morning, Keanu posted a single video online. No music. No edits. Just him. Standing on a small rooftop in a remote village, holding one of the devices, he looked into the camera. "This isn't a movie. This isn't a campaign. This is real. I met a man who stayed up nights building this with his own hands, not for fame or money, but to help people he may never meet. Today someone tried to silence that effort, but I believe in light. I believe in hope. And I believe that together we can keep this alive. If you do too, help us build more." Within minutes, it was shared thousands of times. Within hours, Millions Jash began trending. Hashlight for hope. Hashtag stand with Elon. Hashtag reevesx. Energy celebrities reposted it. Teachers used it in classrooms. Scientists reached out asking for specs. And then something no one expected happened. A little girl from Africa posted a reply. Her home had used one of the generators. And for the first time ever, she had drawn a picture at night and sent it digitally, a drawing of two men holding a glowing box, given it to a crowd. Her caption said, "Thank you for the stars inside my house." The internet wept. Asterisk, asterisk, by evening. Donations poured in, not from billionaires, but from regular people. $10, $20, sometimes more. One message read, "I lost power last month for days. If someone had brought me light, I'd never forget it." Here's something small too. Help. Keanu read every one of them. Then he turned to Elon, who sat in the same chair, stunned. "Looks like we just got funded by the people," Keanu said with a grin. Elon's eyes filled with tears. He wiped them quickly. "I don't know how to." "Thank you." Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. "You already did. The first night you didn't give up." Asterisk, asterisk with the new funding. The team relocated to a borrowed workshop offered by a retired engineer who saw the video. They got to work again. Faster, leaner, smarter. This time it wasn't about approvals. It was about impact. They renamed the project. No more Project Delta. It was now called Project Ember, because even the smallest spark could ignite change. Asterisk, asterisk. But the storm wasn't over yet. 2 days later, an investigative journalist uncovered documents showing that the board members had redirected funding from village projects to luxury models and bonuses. The backlash was swift and brutal. The press swarmed. The board tried to issue statements, but it was too late. They had tried to silence a spark, and instead, they had ignited a fire. Asterisk, asterisk, on the third day.
Asterisk.
The company's stock dropped sharply, and on the fifth day, Elon received a letter, not from the board, but from a group of young engineers who had resigned in protest. They wanted to join him. Elon looked at Keanu. "What now?" he asked. Keanu smiled. "Now we build the future. One ember at a time." Asterisk, asterisk that night. Elon returned to the same hilltop in the village where it had all begun. He watched the lights below, and beside him, Keanu sat with a warm cup of tea, staring into the horizon. "Funny," Keanu said softly. "We started this with no plan." Elon nodded. "Just an idea, and a long night." "You saved me that night," Elon whispered. Keanu shook his head. "You were never broken, Elon. You were just alone." They sat in silence. Above them, stars blinked below them. The village glowed, and in the space between, two men realized something neither of them had spoken aloud. Yet they hadn't just built a machine. They had started a movement. The ember that caught for the sound of gentle wind brushed over the rooftops of the desert village. The night was cooler than usual, and yet every home shimmered with soft golden light. In the far corner, a boy named RF read his school book, aloud to his grandmother, who smiled despite not understanding the words. She didn't care what he read. What mattered was that he could finally see the pages at night, miles away. On a small island near Indonesia, families gathered around their single generator. It powered a radio, a fan, and a charging station. Laughter echoed as children danced to music playing faintly through static. It wasn't perfect, but it was hope. On the mountainside in Peru, elders told stories late into the evening under the glow of lights powered by sun and wind. They spoke of a man who came not with promises, but with a gift, and a stranger who stood beside him like a brother. Asterisk, asterisk, across the ocean. In a borrowed workshop just outside Los Angeles, Elon and Keanu were surrounded by sparks and sawdust. The team was now 20 people strong, working in shifts, building improved models of the Ember generator. They had hired former employees, college students, and retired engineers. Even a high school robotics team had offered their help project. Ember wasn't just surviving, It was growing fast. Each unit now cost less to make. The new models were lighter, easier to transport, and more durable in heat and moisture. And thanks to open-source licensing, local engineers across the globe had started building their own versions. But with growth came new challenges. Distribution was slow. Customs officers delayed shipments. Bigger companies tried to copy the designs and sell them at inflated prices. Even the media, once full of praise, began asking hard questions. How long can this last without corporate backing? Is this just a trend? Is Keanu Reeves really building solar tech, or just playing a role? The pressure was rising, and still, every night, Elon stayed late, running simulations, improving code, checking battery life. And Keanu kept visiting shelters, schools, and refugee camps, delivering generators with his own hands. Listening. 2 stories. Writing names in a notebook he never let go of. They were tired, but they kept going. Asterisk, asterisk one afternoon. While the team was testing a new prototype in the parking lot, a small car pulled up. A woman stepped out. She wore a simple dress, glasses, and carried a folder clutched tightly to her chest. She walked directly toward Elon. My name is Anna. I came from Honduras. I run a school with no electricity. Someone sent me a video of your work. I didn't come to ask for help. I came to tell you that what you've done already helped. Someone built your device from the online plans, so now my students can study after dark. We cook warm meals. We feel seen. Her voice cracked. She opened the folder and pulled out dozens of hand-drawn letters from her students. Each one was a picture of light suns, stars, light bulbs, and in many. 2 men standing side by side. One drawing showed a boy holding a lantern with the words, "My sister no longer cries at night." Elon looked down, then up at Anna. He couldn't speak. Keanu stepped forward, gently took the folder, and said, "You just reminded us why we started." Anna smiled. "I have one more thing. There's a conference in New York next week. It's hosted by the United Nations. They invited me to speak about energy poverty. I told them the people behind Project Ember must be there too. Both of you." Keanu looked at Elon. Elon looked exhausted, but his eyes lit up. Asterisk, asterisk, a week later in a grand room filled with world leaders, scientists, and journalists. Anna stood on a small stage. She spoke not with polish or perfect English, but with raw truth. My village was forgotten. But then someone built a little box that brought us light. No company, no politics, just people. And when people care more about each other than profit, everything changes. Then she gestured. Elon walked to the stage first. The murmurs grew. Louder, then Keanu joined him. The murmurs turned into gasps. Keanu didn't smile, simply took the microphone and said, "I'm not an expert. But I know this. The world doesn't need more millionaires. It needs more moments of kindness. And this man beside me, he gave his time, his mind, and his soul to something bigger than himself. If we all did that, maybe there'd be less darkness." The room fell silent, and then it erupted into applause. Asterisk, asterisk that night. As they walked through the quiet streets of New York, Elon turned to Keanu. "I was scared to come." "Why?" "Because I thought they'd think I was playing the hero." Keanu looked at him. "You weren't playing. You were showing up." They crossed a small park, passing by a homeless man sitting beside a shopping cart. Keanu stopped. He reached into his bag and pulled out one of the early Ember models, a hand-crank charger with a built-in lamp. He walked over and knelt. "This will keep your phone charged and give you light tonight." The man looked at him, stunned. "What's the catch?" he asked. Keanu smiled. "No catch. Just remember you matter." The man's eyes filled. Asterisk, asterisk, days later, the video of the speech went viral. Again, not because of fame, but because it reminded people of something they'd forgotten. That hope doesn't have to be loud. Governments began reaching out. Schools requested training manuals. Volunteers signed up from dozens of countries. And yet, despite all this momentum, Elon knew something bigger was coming. Something harder, because once light touches darkness, not everyone welcomes it. Asterisk, asterisk, a few nights later, back at the workshop, Keanu arrived to find Elon sitting in the dark. A blueprint torn in his hands. What happened? Keanu asked. Elon stood up. We just got hacked. Someone stole our new battery design. It's already being sold online by a startup backed by one of the old board members. They rebranded it. They're calling it Novatech and pricing it at 10 times the cost. Keanu's jaw clenched. Elon paced. This was supposed to be open, shared, but they took it, locked it up, and made it something ugly. Now people can't afford what we meant to give for free. For a moment, silence fell between them. Then Keanu said quietly, "We fight back. Not with lawyers or money, but with what they don't have." "What's that?" Keanu walked over and tapped the notebook on Elon's table. The one filled with real stories, real people, truth, connection, and a community that's bigger than any company. Elon looked at him. "You really believe we can beat them?" "We already did," Keanu said. "We gave light to people. They gave ads." Asterisk, asterisk, and so a new plan was born. They wouldn't chase the thieves, they would outshine them. By the end of the month, Project Ember launched its own community builder program, teaching villages, schools, and shelters how to build Ember units with local materials. They translated manuals into 30 languages. They created video tutorials featuring children, mothers, elders, and the world responded. From Brazil to Nepal to Kenya, Ember centers began rising. It's not factories, but learning spaces where technology met heart. And slowly, Novatech started. Losing its grip, people didn't want shiny boxes anymore. They wanted something built with soul, asterisk, asterisk, one afternoon. While visiting a community hub in Thailand, Keanu watched a young girl help her father assemble a battery. Her hands were small but confident. Her eyes sparkled as she explained the circuit to a group of volunteers. Keanu turned to the teacher nearby and asked, "What made her join?" The teacher replied she lost her home in a storm. But when someone gave her family an Ember kit, she decided she'd never feel powerless again. Keanu smiled. He looked up at the sky, whispering to himself, "This is what light does. It spreads." Asterisk, asterisk, back in Los Angeles, Elon stood before the team. "We're no longer a startup," he said. "We're a spark. And our job is to keep passing it forward." They all clapped, not because of success, but because they finally understood what success meant. Asterisk, asterisk, as the sun set once more over the city. Elon and Keanu sat on the rooftop of the workshop. They didn't speak much. They just watched the lights come on, one by one, across the world. A soft wind passed between them, and somewhere, in a small village neither of them had ever seen, a child whispered, "Thank you." The quiet Resistanceth world had changed. Not in loud explosions or headlines, but in steady, glowing pulses, one ember at a time, from cities buzzing with life to the quiet corners of forgotten lands. The lights were spreading, not just as electricity, but as symbols of hope. People no longer saw the Ember project as a tech solution. They saw it as a movement, a reminder that even the smallest act of kindness could become a revolution. And at the center of it all stood two men who never planned to lead it. Keanu Reeves, the quiet heart. Musk, the restless mind. Asterisk, asterisk, despite the victories, the days were becoming heavier. Every morning brought new challenges, eh? A shipment delayed in Ethiopia. A fire broke out in a storage facility in Brazil. An official in Eastern Europe blocked distribution, claiming unlicensed foreign tech. And worst of all, Novatech had hired aggressive marketing firms. They painted Ember as a celebrity hobby project with unverified technology. They poured millions into TV spots, ads, influencers to spin the story. But Ember had something more powerful than spin. They had the truth. Asterisk, asterisk, one morning. Elon sat across from Maya in the workshop office. His hands were wrapped around a mug of coffee he hadn't touched. "They're trying to erase us," he said quietly. Maya didn't flinch. They can't. Not while kids in my grandmother's village are reading under your light. But we're losing speed. They have private jets. We're delivering kits in backpacks. Maya leaned forward. Then we keep walking. One backpack at a time. Elon smiled faintly. You sound like Keanu. She chuckled. We all do now. Asterisk, asterisk. Meanwhile, Keanu was far from the workshop. He had flown to a refugee camp on the outskirts of Jordan, responding to a handwritten letter sent by a 12-year-old girl named Hannah. She had seen the Ember unit in a nearby school and wrote, I want to learn to build the light. I want to be like the man who gave it to us. When Keanu arrived, he wasn't met with reporters or cameras. He was met with a dozen children running, barefoot, tugging at his sleeves, leading him to a dusty tent where Hannah sat cross-legged. Surrounded by small wires and batteries, she looked up and froze. You came? Keanu knelt down beside her. Of course I did. Made my own, she whispered, holding up a fragile version of the Ember unit. It barely worked. The light flickered. Keanu gently touched it, then handed her a stronger wire. Let's build it together. Asterisk, asterisk. Over the next 2 days, they worked side by side. Keanu taught her the simple tricks he had picked up, and she showed him things he'd never noticed: how to use discarded materials, how to cool batteries using river stones, how to adapt with nothing. By the 3rd day, her light was steady. The entire camp gathered that evening as it illuminated the open tent, casting soft glows on faces worn by years of displacement. She's the future, Keanu told the camp director. The man nodded. Shh. And you gave her the spark. Asterisk, asterisk. At the same time, in a small studio in Texas, Elon recorded a direct message. To Novatech, he began, Thank you. People leaned in. Because of your greed, more people now care about what we're doing. Because of your noise, more people now hear our story. Because of your doubt, more people now believe. No matter how loud you get, we will stay quiet and keep working. The message spread like wildfire. It wasn't angry. It wasn't political. It was powerful. Asterisk, asterisk, but Novatech didn't sit still. Within a week, they announced their biggest campaign yet, Nova Access. A sleek, luxury version of Ember priced at thousands of dollars, sold as a status symbol for sustainable living. They launched with celebrity endorsements, viral billboards, and a massive unveiling in Dubai. Keanu watched the launch on a cracked tablet inside the Jordan camp. The tent was lit by Hannah's Ember. He turned to the children watching beside him. Do you think we need that? The children laughed. He smiled. Me neither. Asterisk, asterisk. Back in Los Angeles, Elon gathered the team. We can't match their marketing, he said. But maybe we don't need to. He pulled down a large white cloth from the wall to reveal a rough, handwritten idea. Ember Radio, a 24-hour online broadcast powered by the Ember units themselves, featuring stories from users across the world. Not celebrities, not experts, just people. Within days, they launched it. One story came from a single mother in Bangladesh who powered an incubator for her premature baby with an Ember device. Another from a fisherman in the Philippines who lit his boat to avoid crashing into rocks, and another from a deaf teenager in Argentina who learned circuitry using Ember manuals. The stories weren't perfect. Some had shaky audio. Some were told in broken English. Some had no words at all, just music, laughter, or the steady hum of light, but they moved people deeply, more than Novatech ever could. Asterisk, asterisk still. Keanu and Elon knew a showdown was coming, one that couldn't be avoided forever, and it arrived. In the form of an unexpected invitation. A global tech summit in Tokyo, one that would bring together innovators, policymakers, and industry leaders to decide which energy platforms would be adopted by dozens of developing nations. Both Ember and Novatech were invited to present it. It wasn't just a conference, it was the future. Asterisk, asterisk, the night before the summit. Elon sat alone in his hotel room. Keanu walked in carrying 2 cups of tea. He handed one to Elon. Ready? Keanu asked. Elon looked out the window. I'm not sure. I'm not a speaker. Not like you. You don't need to speak, Keanu said gently. You just need to tell the truth. Elon turned to him. And if we lose? Keanu sipped his tea. We won't. Not tomorrow. Not ever. Elon smiled. How can you be so sure? Keanu stared out the window, watching Tokyo's lights flicker in the distance. Because I've seen what happens when people remember they have power. Not the kind you hold, but the kind you share. Asterisk, asterisk, the next morning, the hall was full. Nova. Tech's team wore tailored suits. Their presentation had polished videos, animations, and promises of exclusive partnerships. The audience clapped politely, then came. Ember.Elon walked to the stage with trembling hands. Keanu stood beside him, silent. Elon didn't have a script, just a folder. He opened it and pulled out one letter after another. Drawings from children, photos from shelters, stories from villages. No lights, no fanfare, just truth. We didn't build Ember to make money, he said. We built it because darkness should never win. And because even if no one listens, we will keep building. Then he paused. He looked at the audience. But the truth is people are listening. He stepped back. Keanu said one line, "Let there be light." And behind them, the screen filled with real-time footage, thousands of small glowing dots from all over the world, powered by Ember.homes, tents, schools, boats, clinics. The crowd rose to their feet, and for the first time, Novatech had nothing. To say asterisk, asterisk that night, on a rooftop in Tokyo, Keanu handed Elon a candle. You're joking, Elon said, grinning. Double quotes. Nope. Ancient tech. No wires, but still works. They laughed, and lit it between them. A small flame danced. Soft, gentle, unstoppable. When stars touched the ground months past, the Ember project had moved far beyond one workshop, one prototype, or even two men. It had become a movement, etched into the soil of every country it touched. What began as a quiet spark in a warehouse had now transformed into thousands of community-powered stations around the world. From rooftops in Senegal to schoolrooms in Bhutan, the glow of Ember wasn't just about light anymore. It was about human connection. But success, even the quiet kind, brings new decisions. Hard ones, asterisk, asterisk, in a press conference in Nairobi, Elon. Musk stood behind a small wooden podium surrounded by reporters, aid workers, and students. Beside him, a young girl adjusted her Ember unit so her mother's sewing machine could run through the night. She was 11. He leaned toward the mic. Starting today, Project Ember will no longer be led by me. Stunned silence fell across. The room.Elon continued. Because it doesn't belong to me. It never did. It belongs to every hand that built it. Every voice that carried it. Every child that believed in it. From this day forward, Project Ember will be led by local teams across the world through a new global cooperative. His voice cracked slightly. We will no longer sell it. We'll teach it, grow it, and share it freely.
Reporters shouted questions.
Flashes burst, but Elon simply smiled and stepped away. He wasn't sad. He was free. Asterisk, asterisk that same evening. Keanu Reeves sat on the edge of a rooftop in Lisbon, where an Ember training session had just wrapped up. He was drinking tea from a dented tin mug, his eyes watching a group of children race through the narrow streets below. A woman in a yellow dress approached him. I thought you'd be back in Hollywood by now, she said. Keanu chuckled. Hollywood still exists? She laughed too. Then she sat beside him. Why did you really do it? Keanu thought for a moment, then answered slowly. Because I met a man at midnight, working alone. I saw in him the same thing I once saw in myself, someone trying to fix the world in silence. And I realized maybe silence needs company too. The woman nodded. Keanu added, the world is loud with noise. Sometimes we need stories that whisper instead. She didn't speak again, just rested her head on her knees, watching the lanterns glow below. Asterisk, asterisk a week later. Keanu and Elon met for breakfast in a quiet corner cafe in Istanbul. They hadn't seen each other in weeks. Elon looked older, tired. But peaceful Keanu had a fresh notebook in his hand, already half filled. They didn't talk about tech, they didn't talk about launches. They talked about music.t.a. Bird that had been following Keanu from city to city, simple things. Then Keanu asked, "What's next?" Elon looked around and said, "I think I want to learn again. Maybe go back to school." Keanu laughed. "You're the teacher of half the world right now." Elon smiled. "But I forgot how to be a student." Keanu nodded.
That's beautiful.
They clinked their tea glasses, asterisk, asterisk, across the globe. Ember continued to grow, but without fanfare. There were no brand deals. No new names. No big randies. Just more people building light from what they had. In Colombia, a group of teenagers designed a version that could float, lighting fishing nets and saving lives in Ukraine. Engineers created a compact heater attachment powered by Ember for winter shelters. In Alaska, native tribes taught children how to repair circuits with gloves on, so they could work in the snow. And in each place, stories were shared, not on television, but around fires. In classrooms, in whispers passed down like legends. Asterisk, asterisk. Keanu never returned to acting. He still got offers, huge ones, but he politely declined. Instead, he visited orphanages, remote clinics, and women's shelters. He brought light where people had been forgotten. Never with cameras, never with press, just with presence, just with kindness. He once told a boy in Somalia, "Your hands are the future." "Not mine," the boy replied, "but your hand showed mine the way." Asterisk, asterisk, Elon started teaching part-time in a village school in Vietnam. He taught basic physics and storytelling. His students didn't care he once launched rockets. They loved that he stayed late to explain how batteries worked using spoons and fruit. He smiled more now, slept more, wrote letters to children he had met during the early Ember missions. Each letter ended with the same line, "Your light is enough." Asterisk, asterisk, one day, years later, Keanu returned to the original warehouse, now a museum. Left untouched. Inside, on a dusty work table, the very first prototype sat in a glass box next to it. Small plaque read, "The night it all began, 2 strangers, 1 dream." He smiled, took out his notebook, wrote one final line. "Hope isn't loud, but it stays." Asterisk, asterisk, the world didn't give them statues. It didn't rename cities or print money with their faces. Instead, it lit up in silence, one small light at a time. From huts to rooftops, from camps to corners, and in each glowing bulb, you could still feel it, the heart of a man who stayed up at midnight, the soul of another who stopped to sit beside him. 2 strangers who reminded the world that the smallest light can still outshine the deepest dark.